I didn't realize how far I'd disappeared until I heard myself apologizing for taking a shower too loudly in my own apartment at 6 in the evening. Most days of my life aren't exactly exciting. I work as a cashier at a small neighborhood hardware store, the kind that still smells like lumber and oil, and has old guys who know every screw size by memory. I ring things up, chat about paint colors, and remind people to keep their receipts in case their lawnmower mysteriously quits next week. When my shift ends, I walk 3 blocks home to the little one-bedroom I share with my boyfriend, Mark. He moved in last year when the rent hike scared me, and he said, "Why are you stressing? I'll help. We're a team, remember?" At the time, it sounded like love. Now it feels more like a trap I built with my own hands. Back then, Mark worked as a line cook at a bar and grill. I loved that he came home smelling like fries and smoke, dropping tips in a jar on the counter, and kissing my forehead like some tired movie character. We'd sit on the second-hand couch, eat leftover wings, and complain about customers until we fell asleep to whatever was on TV. The first red flag came wrapped in something that looked like concern. One night, I was telling a story about a regular at the store, a sweet older lady who always brought coupons and called me honey. I said I liked helping her find what she needed. Mark laughed and said, "You know she's just using you, right? People like that pretend to be nice so they can walk all over softies like you." I brushed it off. I told myself he was just tired from work, that he didn't mean anything by it. But after that, I caught myself feeling stupid for enjoying talking to customers, like being kind somehow meant I was naive. When the restaurant cut his hours, everything shifted a little more. At first, it was practical. "Hey, can you cover rent this month?" he asked. "I'll pay you back once I get more shifts." I had just gotten a small raise, so it didn't seem like a big deal. I told him, "Of course, we're a team, remember?" He quit a few weeks later. "The chef's a psycho," he said. "I'm not killing myself for people who don't respect me." He said it with so much conviction that I felt guilty even thinking, so what now? What now looked like was me picking up every extra shift my boss offered. Saturdays I used to spend sleeping in. Now I spent them explaining drill bits to people who didn't want to read the labels. When I got home, the sink would be full, the trash overflowing, and Mark would be on the couch, controller in hand, saying, "Hey babe, you're home late." At first, I tried to talk about it gently. "Hey, could you maybe take the trash out if you're home all day?" He sighed, paused his game, and said, "Do you have any idea how depressing it is to be unemployed? I already feel useless enough. Now you're mad at me because the trash isn't out on your schedule?" I remember standing there with my work shoes still on, feeling like I'd just kicked a puppy. I rushed to apologize. "I'm not mad, I'm tired, that's all." He nodded like he was being patient with me, then turned his game back on. It wasn't like he snapped at me all the time. That's what made it confusing. Some days he'd cook dinner or meet me at the door with a hug saying, "My hard-working girl, keeping us afloat." He'd say it like a compliment, but something about the way he dragged out hard-working made my stomach twist. Little things started to pile up. If I said I was too tired for company, he'd invite friends over anyway, and joke that I was being dramatic again. If I mentioned money being tight, he'd look wounded and say, "I'm trying, okay? Sorry I'm not as perfect as you." Eventually, I stopped bringing it up. My friends drifted away one by one. When they invited me out after work, Mark would say, "Didn't you just complain about being broke? But sure, go spend money with people who don't care about you like I do." I'd cancel and tell them I had to work early. They stopped asking. The thing that finally made me feel like I was losing my mind was so small, it almost sounds stupid. One evening, I took a quick shower after work before starting dinner. I came out in sweats, towel around my hair, and found Mark sitting on the couch with the TV off, arms crossed. "What?" I asked. "You really don't hear how loud you are?" he said. "The pipes in this place are thin. The neighbors probably hate us. You never think about stuff like that. It's always your comfort first." Heat rushed to my face. I hadn't even realized I was holding my breath. "I'm sorry," I said automatically. "I didn't think about it." He nodded slowly, like a disappointed parent. "Exactly. You don't think. I'm the one who has to worry about how we look. I went into the kitchen and started chopping vegetables with shaking hands. It wasn't until I caught myself whispering, "I'm sorry" again, this time to the cutting board, that it hit me like a punch. When did I start apologizing for existing in my own home? When did "we're a team" turn into me feeling like a selfish roommate who couldn't do anything right? That night, as I lay awake listening to Mark's soft snoring beside me, a quiet, uncomfortable thought settled in the back of my mind. What if this wasn't just stress or bad luck? What if he had been slowly training me to feel this way the whole time? Over the next few weeks, that question wouldn't leave me alone. It sat in the back of my mind while I counted change at work, while I restocked shelves, while I scrubbed dishes in our tiny sink after Mark had already gone to bed. I started replaying conversations. Little comments I'd brushed off sounded different. "You'd be lost without me. You know that, right?" When I got flustered doing my taxes. The eye rolls whenever I double-checked receipts, like being careful with money was childish. At the hardware store, my boss Linda finally said something. "You look worn out," she told me as we stocked nails. "Just money stress," I said. "Money stress feels a lot lighter when the other person is actually lifting with you," she replied, and then walked away like she hadn't just dropped a brick on my chest. On my lunch break, I stared at my bank app in the stockroom. Rent, groceries, the power bill, plus everything Mark would pay back. The numbers didn't care about his excuses. I was one bad week away from not making it. That night, I tried again. After dinner, he was on the couch, scrolling his phone. "I'm getting really behind," I said. "I need you to cover something this month, even just groceries." He didn't look up. "You know I'm looking for jobs." "I know, I just can't do this alone anymore." He finally set the phone down. "You're acting like I'm dead weight." "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to," he snapped. "I lose my job and suddenly I'm a burden. Got it." My throat tightened. "That's not what I meant. I'm scared, that's all." "You always make everything about you," he said. "Your stress, your feelings. You think I like depending on you?" 10 minutes later, I was apologizing, promising I'd be more patient, while he went to bed early to avoid more drama. In the quiet kitchen, it clicked. Every serious talk ended the same way. I brought up a problem, he flipped it, I comforted him, and nothing changed. Somehow, I was always the villain, and he was always the wounded hero. The breaking point came on a Wednesday. We were supposed to go to my mom's for dinner. She'd been asking for weeks, saving up to make a big meal and send us home with leftovers. I'd already canceled on her twice because Mark was too drained. That afternoon, I reminded him, "Hey, mom's at 6. He made a face. "Do we have to?" "She already cooked. She's excited to see you." "I'm not in the mood to sit there while she hints about job applications," he said. "It's condescending." "She just worries," I said. He smirked. "Yeah, well, she can worry without me." "Please just come," I asked. "For me." "Fine," he sighed. "But don't get mad if I'm quiet." By 5:30, he was still on the couch, controller in hand. I stood by the door with my jacket on, keys clutched so hard my knuckles hurt. "Mark, we're going to be late." He didn't look away from the game. "Then go without me." Something inside me snapped. "You told me you'd come," I said. "I told her you were." He shrugged. "So tell her I'm not." "Why is this such a big deal? You know I hate being around people." "You don't hate being around your friends," I said. "You don't hate staying out until 2 when they text." Now he finally looked at me. "Oh, here we go. You seriously starting a fight over this?" "I just want you to show up for me once," I said, "when it's not convenient for you." He laughed, short and mean. "You're so dramatic. Your mom has you wrapped around her finger, and you expect me to join the cult. Hard pass." The words hit hard, but what really hurt was how certain he was I'd swallow it like always. All at once, the past year lined up in my head. The guilt trips, the half apologies, the way he'd nudged me away from friends, from my mom, from anyone who might say, Hey, this isn't normal. I put my keys back in the bowl and took off my jacket. I'm going, I said. With or without you. He rolled his eyes. Fine. Go cry to mommy about how mean I am. My hands shook as I started the car. I sat there a full minute, fingers locked around the steering wheel, eyes burning. I didn't cry. Instead, for the first time, I let myself name it clearly. He's manipulating you. And a second thought followed, quiet but solid. You don't have to keep letting him. The night at my mom's didn't magically fix anything, but it did something I didn't expect. It let me breathe. She didn't ask probing questions or hover. She just made me a plate, sat beside me, and said, You look tired, sweetheart. And for once, instead of scrambling to defend Mark or pretend everything was fine, I just said, Yeah, I am. She put her hand on my shoulder, gentle and steady. You don't have to prove anything to anyone, she said. You're allowed to want peace. That sentence stayed with me the entire drive home. When I walked through the door, Mark didn't look up from the couch. Well, he said, did she give you the lecture I skipped? No, I said. She didn't. He smirked like he'd scored something. See? Drama avoided. You should thank me. Something settled in me then. A calm, solid feeling I hadn't felt in months. I wasn't going to argue. Arguing always fed him. He loved flipping things, twisting my words, making me apologize just to end the discomfort. I wasn't giving him that anymore. Over the next few days, I went quiet. But not in the way he expected. I stopped explaining myself, stopped reacting to the little digs, stopped trying to predict his moods or cushion his bad decisions. Instead, I started paying attention. Every lie, every twist of a conversation, every time he blamed me for something he'd done or something he'd avoided doing. I wrote it all down in a cheap notebook I kept in my work bag. Not for revenge, at least not at first, but because I needed to see it clearly, without the haze of guilt he always tried to pull over my eyes. And once everything was on paper, the picture was sharp and undeniable. He wasn't going through something. He wasn't trying his best. He had built a system where I did all the work, all the paying, all the emotional carrying, and he got to sit in the center of it, untouched. And the worst part? He genuinely believed I wouldn't ever push back. That's when the revenge stopped being an idea and started becoming a plan. It wasn't dramatic. No screaming, no threats, no traps. Just quiet, steady steps. First, I opened my own bank account at a different credit union. I redirected my paycheck there. He didn't notice. Not once. He never checked statements unless he was trying to guilt me. Second, I started taking pictures. The sink full of dishes he'd sworn he washed. The screenshots of texts where he promised to look for jobs tomorrow. The stacks of unopened mail with his name on bills I'd paid. The groceries I bought while he complained there was nothing good to eat. Third, I called our landlord during my lunch break. I told him the truth. Mark wasn't on the lease, never had been, and I wanted to update documentation. The landlord sighed and said, Honey, if you want him out, all you have to do is give me the word. Legally, he's a guest. That was the moment everything clicked into place. Mark had built his little kingdom on top of my name, my paycheck, my lease, my life. He had power only because I kept handing it to him, so I stopped handing anything over. I packed a small suitcase, a few jeans, work shirts, toothbrush, charger, and left it in my trunk. Not because I was leaving that night, but because I wanted the option. Then I waited. All abusers, real manipulators, have a pattern. When the person they're feeding off stops reacting, stops giving them the emotional payoff, they panic. They do something impulsive. Mark was no exception. On a Friday night, he came into the kitchen while I was making boxed mac and cheese after a late shift. You've been weird, he said. Are you mad at me again? No, I said calmly. Just tired. He scoffed. You're always tired. Maybe if you stopped being so sensitive. I stirred the pot without looking up. Okay. That was all it took. He followed me from room to room, escalating, needing me to rise to the bait. He accused me of cheating. He accused me of hiding money. He accused me of thinking I was better than him. Every accusation, I answered with the same calm. Okay. By the time he finally exploded, I could see it coming a mile away. You know what? He said, shaking with anger. If you're going to act like this, maybe you don't even want me here. And there it was. The opening. I turned to him, drying my hands on a towel, and said softly, Maybe I don't. He froze. He hadn't expected the door to actually open. He only wanted me to beg him to stay, like always. But I wasn't playing that role anymore. I said gently, it's time for you to move out. What? Are you kidding? He shouted. I live here. No, I said. You stay here. There's a difference. He stared at me like I'd hit him. Then he went quiet. Stiff, cold, quiet. You're really doing this, he said. Yes. And then his voice dropped into the tone he always used when he wanted to get inside my head. You won't make it without me. But for the first time, the words sounded ridiculous. Because the truth was painfully simple. I'd been making it in spite of him. He didn't know yet, but my revenge, the quiet, steady kind he never saw coming, had already started. Mark didn't leave right away. Manipulators rarely do. They drag the process out because they're convinced you'll cave first. He tried every tactic, anger, guilt, charm, silence. But none of it landed anymore. When he realized I wasn't budging, he switched to bargaining. I just need a few weeks, he said, to get things together. You have one, I replied. He scoffed. Wow, heartless. I didn't respond. I'd learned silence was stronger than any argument. During that week, I kept everything neutral. No fighting, no long talks, no emotional openings he could pry into. I went to work, came home, took care of myself, and stayed steady. Meanwhile, I prepared. I boxed up his things, carefully, neatly, and labeled them. I put the filled boxes against the wall by the door. I knew he'd see them. That was the point. I also let the landlord know the date he'd be gone. He told me to call if there were any issues. There would be no issues. On the 7th day, when I walked in from work, Mark was pacing the living room. He stopped when he saw me, eyes sharp. You really packed my stuff, he said. Yes. You're kicking me out. I'm asking you to leave, I corrected. There's a difference. He shook his head slowly, like he was disappointed in me. You're going to regret this. I set my bag down. Maybe, but at least I'll know I chose myself. He laughed. This bitter, humorless laugh. You think you're strong? You think you're some kind of survivor? You won't last a month without me. I almost smiled. He genuinely believed that. He had no idea how much I'd been carrying. Mark, I said quietly, I've lasted every month without you. For a second, something flickered in his face. Fear, maybe. Then the anger returned. Fine, he snapped. I'll go, but don't come crawling back when everything falls apart. But nothing fell apart. He left with the boxes, slamming the door so hard a picture frame rattled. The apartment went silent. Not the heavy, suffocating silence he used to create, just clean, simple quiet. I sat on the couch and exhaled so deeply my ribs hurt. It felt like someone had cut a rope that had been tied around my chest for months. The next morning, I went to the credit union and closed the old joint account I'd been using to pay bills. It had $42.18 left in it. I transferred it to my new account and closed the door on that version of my life. Over the next few days, I started doing small things I hadn't realized I missed. Making eggs the way I liked them. Listening to music in the shower without worrying about the volume. Leaving work without a knot in my stomach, wondering what mood I'd find him in. I reached out to a couple of friends I'd pulled away from. 2 responded right away. One said, We missed you. You okay? For the first time in a while, I said, Yeah, I think I am. The real closure came a week later. I got a text from Mark. Rent's coming up. Want me to send anything? For a moment, I thought he was being decent. Then the next message came. Actually, you probably can't handle it alone. Want me to move back in? I stared at the screen, stunned at how predictable he was, how little he'd learned. I typed, "No. Do not contact me again unless it's about picking up remaining items." He responded with 3 long paragraphs about how ungrateful I was, how much he'd done for me, how I was throwing away a good thing. I blocked him. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, it wasn't some triumphant movie moment, but it was final. The real revenge wasn't kicking him out. It wasn't exposing him or humiliating him or getting applause for leaving. It was living a life where he no longer had access to me, where his moods didn't dictate my day, where my home actually felt like mine. Over time, the apartment got cleaner, quieter, lighter. I slept through the night again. My paycheck stretched further. I found myself humming while doing dishes, something I hadn't realized I'd stopped doing. One Sunday morning, while opening the curtains and letting the sun pour in, I caught my reflection in the window. I looked tired, sure, but I also looked peaceful, solid, present. There was no grand moral epiphany, just a simple truth. Some people don't change, but you can. And sometimes the quietest revenge is choosing a life where their voice no longer echoes in your head.